All right, good morning, everyone. So glad you're here to watch this video. I want to talk today about bad salt. It's not actually something that happens too much. We're blessed. We get to buy salt. And you're saying, Dale, are you really going to talk about salt? Well, yeah, in a biblical context. And I just want to say this. I love salt. Most people do. Even if you say I don't like salty food, there are not very many people that like bland food. And salt is one of those things that, it's an amazing thing. It just is. Um, but I'm not going to get too deep into just how great salt is, even though all food, for the most part, tastes better with salt, even cantaloupe, even honeydew melon. I'm just putting that out there. Definitely tomatoes. Anyways, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something that the Lord said, and here it's in Luke chapter 14, verse 34. He makes this statement and he says this, which, look, this is the Lord, so he knows what's up. He knows what he's talking about. Luke 14:34, he says this, salt is good. Huh? There you have it. It's the Bible, people. Okay, but he goes on. If the salt has lost its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? That doesn't actually normally happen, right? You get your salt and it's fine. It's salty. I don't even know what it has to happen to salt for it to lose its flavor. But if it could lose its flavor, would you reseason it? No. No, you wouldn't. And that's the question. How would you do that? You wouldn't do it. Even if you had a bunch of salt that was flavored and a bunch without its flavor, you wouldn't mix them up because now you just have weak salt. And it's interesting that Jesus says this stuff anyways. He says this, verse 35, he says, it's neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill. He's saying, what are you going to do with it? It's not really good for anything. It's not fit for the land. It's not fit for the dunghill. You're not going to throw it in either of these places. But men throw it out. They just get rid of it. And then he says, he who has ears, let him hear. Very interesting. This is the conclusion that Jesus makes on the topic that he was just talking about. And this is what he uses. This is, the cool thing about the Lord is he makes points talking about things that everybody knows about. Everybody knows about salt. Everybody knows how good it is. Okay? If you had to choose one spice and that was it, choose salt. You know why? Because it is more effective times 1,000 than all of the rest. Without salt, the rest of the spices, they're not going to have much flavor. Nothing is. But he's making a point. He's talking about something everybody knows about. And he's talking about salt that has lost its flavor. Now in Luke 14, it's really interesting because what he's actually talking about are people that, basically, he's talking about a person that decides to do something without figuring out the cost to do that thing. And he makes a lot of bold statements here. And he says, basically, who would build a tower without figuring out if they could afford to finish it? Or, which king goes to war? And without thinking about it and seeing if they could actually win. And then he basically starts making statements about his disciples. At the very beginning, he says, look, you have to choose me over everyone else. You have to choose me over everyone else. And he says this statement, which is very powerful, verse 27, whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. He's basically saying whoever does not face death, put the old man to death, basically lay down his life and follow Christ, whoever doesn't do that is not worthy to be called his disciple. And, or he says actually can't be his disciple. And see what he's talking about here, he's talking about people that want to say that they are a believer, that they follow Christ, but they will only do it for gain. They will not do it if it costs them anything. That's what we call a fair weather believer. Somebody that only does it when everything is working out, when everything goes well. And basically, the whole crux of their relationship with the Lord is, I will be your follower as long as I get what I want, or as long as there's no major problems. Well, there's going to be major problems. And the thing is, if you're in that place where you don't really count the cost, you don't consider like what could happen, you don't think it through. Basically what the Lord's saying is that's like salt without flavor. We know salt's good, okay? But if it has no flavor, what's the point? And he says it's not even worth throwing on a dunghill. It's not worth just throwing on the dirt. It's garbage, okay? And these are some really intense sayings that the Lord has. But listen, this is for us to really consider, because each one of us has to really consider just how much might be required of us as the world gets darker and darker, as things get crazier and crazier. You don't know what's going to happen. Okay? I mean, we could lose our standing in society, we could be persecuted, we could lose our retirement plans, we could lose our homes, you name it. Nobody knows, right? The only person that really knows the future is the Lord. But that's the point. Am I going to follow the Lord regardless of what happens to me? Am I going to be one of those guys that doesn't count the cost, and when things start to go sideways and it starts to get messy, I just bail out? This is a more important point to consider than most people give the time of day to think about. And the reason for that is, if you truly count the cost and you consider all that could be at stake, your decision and your desire to follow Christ still is not something taken lightly. It's not just words. Talk is cheap, right? People say things all the time, amazing things. You know, hey, listen, if you ever need something, just give me a call. It's yours. Well, that doesn't always work out. And he finally says, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. I mean, the Lord's saying, look, you have to choose me or stuff. You have to realize, now, is Jesus saying you need to go and take all of your worldly possessions and burn them? No, but you have to esteem Christ as more valuable and more important than everything else. And a lot of people don't do that. And what happens is, when things go bad, they start to question whether God loves them. They start to question all kinds of things. but it's because they've made a profession without actually weighing out if they would count the cost. They just don't take the time to count the cost and say, okay, Lord, whatever happens, I'm yours. I can personally say, from my viewpoint and from my experience, I've seen a lot of people do this. Proclaim to be a disciple of the Lord, proclaim to follow him, but never count the cost. And I've seen a lot of those people just walk away. Did they completely forsake the Lord? I don't know. Did they just disappear into the world? Yes. I have no idea what happened to them. And every time it's a heartbreak, and every time it grieves me. And today, I'm just telling you guys, it's time to count the cost. Time to think this through. Okay? You don't want to be bad salt. You don't want to be something that should be good but has no flavor. Right? You don't want to be that. You don't want to be something that you think is going to, you sprinkle on your food because you think it's going to be good, and then you realize that did nothing, and you realize it's good for nothing. This is the issue here with this salt. It has no flavor. So it's time to count the cost. It's time to really just say, okay, Lord, my life is yours. I was bought at a price. I mean, you see the cost that was paid by the Lord. So it's time for us to really take that into account and say, okay, I see all that you did, Lord. So I am going to trust you. I'm going to allow you to do whatever you want. And I'm going to keep following you. So anyways, I hope that gives you something to think about. Of course, it's Monday. We have a week ahead. So let's get our brain in the game, so to speak. Let's engage in the battle that we're going to face this week. Please leave me a comment if this blessed you. Thank you so much for watching it to the end. Also, if you haven't yet, like and subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate that. And I'll see you tomorrow.